Vodafone Idea is on a tightrope walk. On one side, it still has a substantial chunk of 266 million, 26.6 crore Indians using its service, while on the other, it is weighed down by heavy AGR dues of $7.9 billion, 58,000 crore. At first, when faced with such heavy dues, its initial reaction was to abandon the Indian market. With little confidence left in the company, subscribers began deserting the sinking ship, as many as 8 million in the September 2020 quarter alone. During the same period, Airtel and Jio soared. But it now seems that they are taking fresh guard. First was a name change from the long-winded Vodafone Idea to a more zippy VI. They then spent 220 crore co-sponsoring IPL, trying to tell everyone that they were still around, providing enough assurance of survival to secure a line of credit of up to $2 billion, 15,000 crore from a US-based consortium. But their task is uphill as subscribers continue to desert them, and whether they survive is anyone's guess. Unfortunately, India's crucial telecom sector that is supposed to be the backbone of our digital age is littered with failures and bank loan defaults, amounting to 215,000 crore, $28 billion. A lot of it, especially the current AGR fiasco, is due to the failure of government to take prompt decisions and passing of the buck to the judiciary. AGR is related to the sale of radio waves, the invisible spectrum of light that passes through everything everywhere. This spectrum is further divided into bands of telecom, each with their own separate lanes and speeds. At first, usage of that spectrum was sold for a high one-time telecom license fee payable upfront, which meant that a very high investment was needed just to start services. Which is why when mobile telephony was first introduced in the country on July 31st, 1995, call rates were as high as 24 rupees a minute. To solve this problem of high initial investment, Atal Bihari Vajpayee's BJP government in 1999 introduced a revenue sharing model, where telcos would pay 8% of their revenue as license fees and an additional 3 to 5% of revenue as spectrum usage charges, a pay-as-you-go model. But 6 years later, the Department of Telecommunications, DOT, got into a disagreement with telcos over how to calculate revenue. DOT wanted telcos to pay fees based on all their income, telecom and non-telecom. But telcos had so far been paying license fees on only their telecom income. So the telcos, together as a group, challenged the government's definition of gross revenues with TDSAT, a court especially created in 2000 to deal with issues related to this sector. 2 years later, in 2007, TDSAT ruled against the government.
Gross revenue does mean all revenue, but with some exceptions.
This they called AGR, or Adjusted Gross Revenue. But Dr. Manmohan Singh's government did not like this ruling and appealed to the Supreme Court, who hit the ball back into the government's court.
Let TDSAT decide.
This ping-pong battle continued between the government and the Supreme Court for a few years. In the middle of all this, in 2010, an alleged 2G auction scam worth 1,76,000 crore by UPA Telecom Minister A. Raja was hyped by the media and political parties. It was in this frenzied backdrop in 2011 when the Supreme Court reversed their initial recommendation.
TDSAT has no jurisdiction to decide on the validity of terms and conditions of the license.
The telcos appealed this, but 8 years later, in October 2019, another bench of the Supreme Court upheld the previous ruling.
Payment should be based on all revenue, with no exception.
This heavy-handed judgment meant that telecom companies now owed the government 1,47,000 crore, $19 billion, almost half of it in just penalties and interest. The Modi government, realizing that tons of jobs were at stake in the telecom sector, was willing to be lenient.
Telcos can pay this to us over 20 years.
They also did not want a duopoly situation, that is a market in which there are only two players, and preferred there be healthy competition. While it is no secret that Jio's entry in September 2016 shook up the market by bringing down call and data rates to the lowest in the world to less than the cost of a vada pav or golgappa, Jio was able to do this because it was not burdened with the high license fees of 3G and 4G that were auctioned way back in 2010 in the backdrop of the 2G scam, where the figure of 1,76,000 crore was vastly exaggerated and A. Raja later in December 2017 was exonerated of wrongdoing. Still, the government had no choice but to use that figure as a base price for the next spectrum auction, lest they be accused of corruption once again. So despite targeting 5.63 lakh crore, $76 billion as license fees, Nobody was ready to pay the inflated price, and eventually they only managed to garner a little over 10%. While VI barely survives, Airtel too has had a tough time making profits recently. This in short is how the telecom sector got messed up, and now AGR has added to the telcos' problems, who are left with no choice but to pay up. Airtel has paid over a third, while VI has barely paid 15%. Jio was fined and paid the small amount of 195 crore it owed, but the court wants it to pay for using RCOM spectrum since 2016. Public sector units that also had plans of setting up telecom infrastructure along with their oil and gas and power lines and had bought spectrum were asked to pay up too. But while DOT withdrew its AGR demand from public sector units and the Supreme Court also acquiesced, they showed no such understanding towards private sector telcos. However, in a breather, the Supreme Court gave the telcos 10 years to pay their dues, 10% every year. VI's survival now depends on a few factors. 1. How soon their large 2G base of 166 million users, which typically have substantial lower spends, switch over to 4G. Because 60% of their base of 272 million are feature phone users, VI's ARPU, average revenue per user at 119, lags that of Bharti Airtel and Reliance Jio. Every 10 rupees added to ARPU leads to about $400 million in incremental cash flow. 2. How soon VI can hike prices, though such a hike will be limited by the extent to which Jio follows suit, who flush with funds have no urgent need to do so. But forget VI, even Airtel is feeling the pinch.
Average revenue per user must go up to 200 rupees and then 300 pretty soon.
3. How soon VI can stop the leak in subscribers. VI needs to invest $1.5 to $2 billion annually in their 4G infrastructure to make it comparable to that of Airtel and Jio. Cash-strapped VI's 1,000 crore capex spends in the September 2020 quarter was well below Airtel's and Jio's. Because until they cannot improve their call drop rates and solve their connectivity issues, no amount of band-aid like rebranding will do. Something which they are well aware of.
We tried to minimize the impact on customers. Sometimes we were not successful, but now we absolutely aim to deliver great services.
If the estimates of Fitch ratings of VI losing around 50 to 70 million subscribers in the next 1 year, after already having lost 155 million over the last 2+ years, they have a major challenge ahead. It seems that their strategy is to survive for the next 2 years and make the company sufficiently attractive for Amazon and Verizon to renew talks to buy them. However, the AGR judgment may well end up delaying the rollout of 5G in India by at least 1 or 2 years, a cascading effect far more deadly than VI's survival. Airtel has already decided not to participate in 5G auctions this year.
We can't afford it at current reserve prices recommended by TRAI, as it makes no business sense.
TRAI's current 5G reserve price at 492 crore per megahertz is about 4 times that of South Korea and the UK. Making 5G unaffordable will make India miss the bus and fall behind other countries in 5G related technologies. Even for the renewal of 4G auctions worth $39.5 billion, DOT is sticking to a 3% spectrum usage charge for airways despite pleas by telcos to lower it. We've all heard the story of the hen that laid golden eggs and what happened when the owner got too greedy. There is surely a lesson to be learnt here. Bisbo's limerick. VI's survival is anyone's bet, burdened as they are with a mountain load of debt. If for a year or two they can increase ARPU, they will have at least handled the immediate threat. Subscribe to Bisbo and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever Bisbo releases a new video. Sources of all our information is listed in the video description section.